Alright, so now we have a proper working connection and we have seen that we can send data from server to the victim machine and vice versa. So our next goal would be to expand further on that. For example, to create different features. Let's say you want to run a command on your victim machine. So what you can do is you have to send command from your server or hacker machine to the victim machine. The victim machine will execute this command on its own PC, and then you will get back the result to your main machine. So this is the whole kind of back and forth communication. So in this step, we will try to achieve the same objective. So our first goal would be to execute a command on the remote system. In order to do that, we have to create a new file called handle connection. And in this file, we will try to create a handler for this connection. You will see what I mean by a handler. So we will go to the core and then we will create a file called handle connection. So handle connection.py. So currently I am on my server machine. So let's create a method called handle connection. And what this method is going to do is that it's going to take a socket connection which we created here in our main file. So this one, which is my socket object, and then it is going to repeat the same procedures inside this function so we can organize our code in a proper manner. So I'm going to call it my socket here, and then we can simply print a statement showing what this function is doing. We can say that handling connection. So now what we want to do here is that we want to create an infinite loop. So what this loop will basically do is that it will ask you for what you want to do again and again. So you don't have to start your program over and over again. I'm going to create an infinite loop here called while true. And then here we will ask the user for options. So first we will say put select your option. So, and before entering it, what we can do is we can create a function here which will tell us which options do we have available. So our first option would be to execute command. So we can say define show options. This function will tell us our options. So I'm just going to copy it so I don't waste a lot of time. So first option would be to run command on the victim OS. So if we press 1 here, so it will send our input to the victim machine, and the victim machine will know that now we want to execute command on the victim machine. And then we can store it in a variable called user input. Once we have this user input, we can simply use this my socket to send data. So if I go to the connection, we have a function called send data, and it requires a user input. So I'm going to give the user input here. So my socket dot send data, and then I can give the user input as an argument. So now we should also handle this on our client machine, so the client machine receives it. So before I go to my client machine, I will remove these things, which is sending and receiving data, which we developed previously. And similarly, I will do the same here. So I will go to my client and remove these two lines. Now I have to create the handle connection here as well. So I will go to the core and create a new file called handle connection.py. And now we will handle connection here. So we will create the function with the same name, so we are consistent with our terminology, and then it will require my socket object. We can simply print here handling connection. So note that this is our server machine, but currently we are entering print statements here because we are developing our program Once we complete our program, what we can do is we can remove these statements, and also you will see that we will create this file with no console. So when you will run this file, there would be no output on the screen, so the user won't know what is happening in the background. But currently, since we are developing, it is easier to see the output and see what is happening, so we can debug it easily if there is an error or something. And then we will create an infinite while loop here too, because since we have an infinite loop here, handle connection, so we have to create a similar loop here, so we are being consistent. So I will say while true. And now since we are sending data from the victim is from the hacker machine, so our goal here would be to first receive this user input. So in order to receive it, I can simply use my socket object dot receive data, receive underscore data, and then I'm going to store it in a variable called user input. Note that I'm using the same naming conventions, so this will help us to create a better model for our code, and we will see what is happening properly. You can use different variable names, but then it will get confusing as your program will go bigger. So now we have a user input, so we can simply print it, so we can read it what is happening or what the user input. So we can say user input, and then we can enter the user input here. So note that this is currently an infinite loop, so if we don't put an exit condition here, this loop will continue indefinitely, and this can break our machine, and this can cause a lot of problems. So what we want to do here is we can put an exit condition here. So my exit condition would be, for example, if the value of user input is 99, I will exit my program. So I will say if user input equals to 99, I will say break this loop. Sorry, not breakpoint, break this loop. I can do the same on this victim machine as well. So if user input equals to 99, I will break it. So now we have a program that we can use to send data to the victim machine. So I will try running it, and you will see that. So now it's waiting for incoming connection. Actually, before connection, let's check what is the IP of this machine. So we hope it didn't change, but let's just to be sure. So I can say sudo ifconfig password. So it's 192.168.0.32. So if I go to the main client, so it is the same value here. So now this should work properly. So I can say python main client, and there is some error, I guess. No, there is no error. It established connection properly, but since I didn't print anything here, which is if I go to the handle connection, okay, so I didn't call my handle connection method in the main file. So what it did was that it accepted the connection, printed the statement, and exited. So now what we can do is from core dot handle connection, we can say import handle connection method, and then we can call this handle connection method here and provide my socket as the object, and we can do the same on the client side as well. So I can say from core dot handle connection import handle connection, and then we will call this handle connection method here and provide my socket as an object, and then we can close this socket. So you can say my socket dot, okay, so close. So I don't have a closure method defined here, so I'm going to define it here. So let's say define close, and it is going to take self, and then we can say self dot close, self dot socket.close. Close. So now you have a close connection here. So I can call this connection my socket.close. Now it should go away. Now this should work, I think. No module named code.handle connection. So what is the name? Okay, so it's handle capital C, not small c. Alright, so let's run this program again. And then this client machine. So now you can see that it says handling connection. So now we have to give the user input because it says select your options. If I go to the handle connection, you will see that select your options and then it is waiting for user input. So I am going to say 11. So now if you see user input 11, so and then it is asking me for input again. So whatever I input, it will go to the victim machine. So if I say 34, it has gone to here as well. So now if I press 99, this should exit. Now you can see that it has exited, and if I go to the Windows machine, you can see that it has exited here as well. So now we have a proper working connection that we can use to send commands. In our next lectures, we will build on top of it.